I've made 5 years worth of mistakes in film photography, and I don't want you to go through the same. Like why this item can save your film quality at an airport, why I'd recommend a camera like this to almost all beginners and even pros, and tricks I use to reduce my spending from around £40 per roll, all inclusive, down to under £20. Here are 7 unique tips that I actually think most people forget to mention. Number 1, airports. When you're traveling to an airport, you're most likely going to have to pass your luggage and your things through an X-ray scanner. X-ray scanners are everywhere in airports, and they're even in places like museums, and X-rays can reduce the quality of your film. They can add grain, they can add these weird banding effects, and I only found out about this a few years in, like nobody told me about this beforehand. What's coming up soon is that most airports are actually looking to upgrade from X-ray scanners to CT scanners. CT scanners are essentially X-ray scanners on steroids. They give about like 70 times the radiation of X-rays. So it's safe to say that if you were to pass your film through a CT scanner, you can assume that it's going to do some damage. And so you're going to want to have a strategy to get around this. So the 2 main strategies I want to talk about is, first of all, asking for a hand check at the airports. Try and go to someone who looks friendly. Try and go to a line which is a bit less busy. And try and go in advance, especially you don't want to be rushing to catch your flight and then ask them to do this, because it can take 5-10 extra minutes out of their day. And to make your life easier, I would recommend giving them the film all together in either a bag, like a clear bag, or something like this, which doubles up as a protective factor. This is essentially a lead lined bag. What that means is that when you put your film in here, if you have to pass it through an X-ray scanner, it minimizes the amount of radiation that can get through to the film. Now, there is a bit of a technicality, which is that a lot of X-ray scanners actually say that they are actually safe for film, only for speeds lower than 800. And even though it technically says it's safe, I wouldn't take the chances. If you can get a hand check and you can spend 5 minutes just getting your hand checked, why risk it? My personal opinion is try not to pass any film through X-rays, because they all might have a minute effect and it will all add up. And if you're doing that again and again and again and you're passing it through X-ray scanners, it can, cause damage. Now at this point, I'm just going to quickly interrupt to ask you to kindly consider subscribing. If you do like this video and you'd like a comprehensive guide to everything film photography, I might consider making that. Just let me know in the comments below. Tip number 2. Point and shoot cameras are goated. I bought this Olympus Mu 2 very recently, okay? I spent a bit more than what I probably should have, mainly because I bought on eBay, came from Japan, and they're really popular right now. But I cannot tell you how much of a joy it has been to have a camera like this. And I'll tell you why, especially as a beginner. Number 1, it is tiny. It can fit in your pocket. You can take it pretty much anywhere. It's very sleek. It's got this clamshell design which opens up, and it's super simple to use. You literally just open it up, press the button, and it takes a shot. And it also has flash, which none of my other cameras have, which I'm going to come back to later, because that is such a massive plus. A camera like this also means that I end up not being super precious about every single type of shot I want to take. With some of the other cameras, I was always kind of being really stingy with how many pictures I was taking. I've always been a very intentional kind of shooter anyway, so I take less shots than most people. When you've got a camera like this, it's so easy to just take it out, take those shots throughout the day, which otherwise you'd kind of feel like that's not going to be a banger. But in retrospect, it gives you extra pictures which you really look back on and enjoy. And the reason why I also bought it even as a sort of intermediate sort of film photographer, is that now I can give it to my wife, I can give it to my friends, and they all actually know how to use it, which is you open it, you point and shoot. That's all you have to do. With these other cameras, you have to play around with the settings a little bit. You got to kind of know a bit about film photography. It's not super easy to just give it to someone and they're trying to get the focus wheel right. It takes too long. This is simple. You can give it to anyone. If you want behind the scenes shots of what you're doing with your main camera, you can give this to someone, and that way you're utilizing other people to take their perspectives as well, and you get a lot more pictures out of it at the end of the day. But if you're not interested in something like this and oh shit, that's all right. To be fair, I dropped this a little while ago and it's like half broken. I need to fix this anyway. Number 3, flash is needed. I made this mistake for way too long. As you can see from the cameras here, none of them have flash. I don't want to carry something chunky around which has a flash and connect it, because my style is sort of run and gun. When you start using film and film cameras, you're going to realize that it needs a lot more light in order to get a well exposed picture than a mirrorless camera than your iPhone or your Samsung. And that takes a bit of time to get used to. It also can be really frustrating to actually be in so many situations where you're like, I don't have a flash. My camera is telling me that it's going to be too dark. What do I do? And I just hate being in that situation because it ruled out so many interesting scenarios. Now I finally have a camera with a built-in flash, and it's worth its weight in gold. It finally means that night photography is a breeze. I can just, I capture indoor or events and, parties and sort of family gatherings with no problem. And anyone can do it. It automatically detects when it's dark enough that it needs flash, and it takes a picture. Tip number 4, light meter deception. Okay, this is going to be a bit difficult to explain, but I want you to bear with me, okay? So let's say, for example, I've chosen my ASA, I've got the film stock, I put that in, I'm using Portra 400 for example, and I want a shutter speed of 1/60. I don't want anything slower than that because I know it's going to come out with a blurry image. And I'm in quite a dark environment. I'm like, it's like nearly sunset, it's getting darker. I want to take a nice picture. But for some reason, my light meter is flashing 1.4. It's saying I need to choose an aperture of 1.4 in order to get a well exposed image. Or is it? So the thing is with these light meters is that 1.4 is the most open it will go. It might actually need even more light than this, but it can't show you any other number because that's the maximum aperture it has. And that's a bit of a problem because if you think, okay, 1.4 is going to give me a good image, but really it needs something all the way over here, your picture is going to be so very dark. If I am looking at a scene and it's suggesting 1.4, I want to know, is that a true 1.4 recommendation, or is it just it can't show me any higher values? And the way to do that is the following. If you slow down your shutter speed, one stop at a time, so just change that on your shutter speed, and every time just check what the light meter is now saying. If you have to increase or slow down your shutter speed 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and eventually what will happen is if you keep going, that aperture will finally go from the highest value to one above. So to bring that all together, what I'm trying to say is if you're ever in a situation where you're pointing the camera at something and your light meter is saying the maximum aperture, like I recommend you choose the maximum aperture, in order to see how many stops of light off you are truly, okay, you play around with the shutter speed, just slow it down a bit and see how many stops you're off. If you're off by like 1 stop, it's not going to be the end of the world, but some films are more forgiving than others. For example, HP5, you can go a few stops up and down and you can still kind of bring in that detail, whereas other films are very fragile. If you don't expose them correctly, it's gonna come out with a pretty crappy picture. So try this on the go. It really helps knowing when not to take a picture. But there is one thing you can do to make this kind of situation easier for yourself. But first, let me tell you about the sponsor of this video, Sunsama. These guys understand productivity and I absolutely love them for it. Sunsama is a task manager and a calendar app, and it integrates with all your favorite other apps. It's got a clean design, it's easy to use, it's got Pomodoro and focus modes, Kanban boards, and so much more. I personally really like the today function, which essentially focuses on the day at hand, and any new tasks that come in which aren't really urgent, I can just kind of like swipe them into the backlog list. And if I need to, I can actually pull up my Google Calendar, which is integrated, and I can drag in my tasks for the day to time block them out. So give it a try for 30 days, free of charge. You don't even have to put in your credit card details, and thank me later. Tip number 5 is about pushing film. Now, this is not a beginner tip per se. And the reason I'm bringing this to you now as a beginner is because I want to get your head around the fact that if you find yourself really frustrated that you are in situations with medium to low light and your camera is just saying, look, I can't manage this, it's too low light and the pictures aren't coming out great, there is an easy way to overcome that, which is pushing film. Now, I'm going to try and explain to you what pushing film is, and that is the complicated bit to get your head around it, but I've got practical tips which can actually make your life really easy and do this without having to understand what's really going on. Now, the 3 factors I was showing you earlier, those can all influence whether or not your picture becomes brighter or darker, but there is one other step, which is how long you develop that film in the chemicals. If you leave it longer in the chemicals, it can actually increase the brightness of the image by about 1 stop. You can do this for 2 stops, 3 stops, 4 stops. I think you can safely pretty much push almost all film by at least 1 stop without having much of an issue. Now, the side effects of doing this process, by the way, just to let you know in advance, is that your film is going to have more contrast, so the brights are going to be more brighter and the dark bits are going to be more darker. Colors might be a bit more punchier and you're going to have a bit more grain. But I found that it doesn't really affect the image that much to the point where I'm like, oh, I'd hate this image. It doesn't really do that. But what it does do, it makes it easier to shoot in lower light situations. Let me tell you how. You've got a film stop of 400. You can't change that. It is what it is. If your film stop was actually something like 800 or 1600, that would be so much more beneficial for you in nighttime, because it would mean that it's so sensitive to light that it allows you to shoot apertures more on this side. It would allow you to shoot shutter speeds more on this side of the spectrum. And that is the ideal, right? Like, you want to have all these different shutter speeds and apertures at your disposal. But at nighttime, you're forced to use the slow shutter speeds. You're forced to use the slow apertures. So this is what you can do. You put in your 400 speed film, let's say for example, you're going to plug in the value onto your camera as 800. You're going to trick your camera into thinking it's using 800 speed, which temporarily allows you to use the better shutter speeds, the apertures more along this spectrum. But what that means is it's easier to shoot, but your picture is going to have a little bit 1 stop less light. But the way you bring that light back in is in the development process. You ask them to push it by 1 stop, for example. If you pretended to use 800 instead of 400, that's 1 stop. If I was using 400 film and I told the camera I'm using 1600 film, I'm going to tell the lab that I've pushed it by 2 stops, because that's what I've done. Like I said before, it's still going to have that effect, which is more contrast, a bit more grain. The trade-off for me is great because you're getting a great image in a darker situation and more flexibility to shoot. I'll take that any day of the week. And all you have to do is just, if you're using 200 speed film, just double the number, plug that into your camera. If you're using 400, double that number, plug that into your camera. It's not always so easy in point and shoots because they are automatic. They just read the film and they just go with whatever film ASA it is. But in cameras like this, you can actually do this trick and you can just pay a few extra pounds per roll of film with the lab and they will push your film accordingly. So check it out, watch some videos on pushing film. I wouldn't recommend pulling film, especially for beginners. I've not needed to use that, nor do I currently know of many situations where I would need to use that. But pushing film by 1 or sometimes 2 stops is actually a very helpful technique. Tip number 6, save money. First of all, choose your lab wisely. I still send all my film to a lab. I don't develop at home. That would save me a lot more money. I'm just not quite there yet. So I pay a lab to do it for me. But a lot of people might be sending their film to really crappy high street labs, which, number one, they don't actually give your negatives back. That is essentially your hard copy of the film. In the future, if you want to rescan it and get the image again, a digital copy, you can do that. It's like a hard copy. Always make sure the lab is giving you your negatives back. But also check out if you can find a lab which does something called free posting. So in the UK, there's a kind of a process where I can just put it in a letterbox, or I can drop it to a post office and they will ship it free of charge without me having to pay anything. Why? Because the business itself, the lab, has agreed to pay the fee on behalf of whoever's posting it. Then all I pay for is the developing of the film, so that might cost me about £7 per roll, and then I get the negatives back. I don't print anything unless it's a really nice holiday or something that I just want nice memories from, and I don't ask them for scans anymore. This is a very recent thing. I have invested in a contraption called the Veloy Easy 35 and also some software, which all in all cost me a few £100. But because I already have a mirrorless camera and I have a macro lens, I had most of the ingredients to scan my own film already. So I thought, why not just put in the extra amount of money and scan my own film in the future? Yes, it adds a bit more time, but in the long run, it will save me a lot of money because I was spending close to £10 per roll of film just to get those images. Now I can do it for free. So for beginners, that might not be what you're looking for, but it's just an idea to have in the back of your mind that if you started film photography and you're like, you know what, I can see myself taking 10 or 20 rolls of film per year, you might want to look at investing. If you've already got a camera setup, if you already take videos, if you're already into filming, you've got macro lens, you've got DSLR or mirrorless camera, you've pretty much got all the ingredients already to be able to scan your own film. And that also means that I can do things like sell prints, which by the way, I've got a print store up for the first time. If you're interested, you can buy them if you like. I'll leave a link in the description. Now, the last and final tip, tip 7, preventing mistakes. Now the first tip is actually a very simple one, but I feel like a lot of people might not actually know this, which is that when you have a film roll like this, if I put in the film, but you can see that I have to pull out the film a little bit. If you were to take a picture on this, no images would be captured. So let's say, for example, I've loaded up the film, I've closed the back, let's put that back down. So this number indicates how many pictures we've taken so far. And what I want to show you is that as soon as you load the film, it's going to start like this. But as you can see, as I take a picture and wind it, I'm actually bringing it closer to the first actual true image. You're going to see that eventually it has now arrived at the number 1. So many times I would actually load up the film and I'd just start taking pictures without remembering to actually push, take some pictures and wind the film out up until the first image. So always remember that, start taking your picture from here. So if you want to be safe around this kind of point, if you really want to take a certain type of picture, just try and take 1 or 2 around the starting point and then go on to your normal, picture taking as usual. Another mistake that I commonly used to make was that if I changed film, let's say for example 200 ISO or ASA to 400 or 800, I would forget to change the light meter settings. So you can see numbers over here which are 200, 400, and that is where you tell your camera what ASA setting you're using. So if I'm using 200 now, I'm going to press this little button and I'm going to wind it down to 200. And so just always remember that you've put it on the right setting. It doesn't matter if you've taken a few pictures already with the wrong setting. That just means that you've taught the light meter has not, it wasn't calibrated properly when you were taking those pictures, but it doesn't mean it will affect the rest of your pictures so long as you actually change the setting as soon as you realize that it's been on the wrong one and you put it on the correct setting. And the final little tip that I have is that if for some reason you have these big blobs on your images and you're not quite sure why they're there, but they're always coming up in the exact same position on your pictures, chances are you've probably got a bit of dust on your lens. Now, most people, you'll find that you will get dust on this outside part of the lens. That usually isn't the culprit. It's usually on the inside, okay? I'm gonna press that down, I'm gonna remove it here, and turn it upside down, okay? And what I'd recommend you buy, this is just called a sort of, air blower or something like that. You just blow onto the lens. Ideally you wanna do this upside down. So I'm blowing on it like that, so that dust falls downwards against gravity. You want to do it in this system as well to make sure you're getting rid of all the dust. Turn that upside down. And the lens is back on, and then hopefully that should get rid of your little problem. And that is all, folks. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I might even make a succinct course on film photography if that's what you like. Just let me know in the comments. And to leave you with some inspiration, I made a video a little while ago about nostalgia and how I create nostalgia using film photography. So check that out. See you in the next one. Make sure to subscribe.